Well, it happened. The holidays have come and gone. A new year is upon us. Work has resumed. Children are back at school. The radio stations have returned to their regular programming. The candy aisles have now transitioned fully from red and green kisses to pink candy hearts. In other words, friends, whether we like it or not, whether we're ready or not, Christmas is over. Kaput. Done. And what do we have to show for it? Some socks? A sweater? Maybe that device we were hoping for? Who knows, maybe this was the year that we received that hippopotamus we've been asking for all these years. But what's really changed? How different is our life now than it was before Christmas, those of us who didn't get a hippopotamus? We get so busy preparing for this day, hauling out all of the decorations, getting our hearts and minds ready, listening to the music, getting into the moment, and then we celebrate the day, the moment in which we remember the entrance of the Christ child into the world, that light which shines in the darkness that no darkness can overwhelm, our hope and our life and our light, and then it's done. And as we haul our trees out to the curb, we're left wondering, what difference did it make? Today is Epiphany, like the actual day, 12 days after Christmas. And as the name implies, Epiphany is that day in which we finally recognize something, in which we understand something, in which the light bulb goes off. In this case, something about that child born in the manger. Traditionally, this is the day when we tell the story of the wise men who followed a star to pay homage to that child born King of the Jews. We three kings of Orient are. They're the very first people in Matthew's gospel to pay any attention to Jesus, to recognize that there was something special about them. In other words, it's their epiphany that we celebrate. But maybe, just maybe, if we tread the path that they trod, it might become our epiphany as well. Maybe by walking alongside them on this journey, we might learn something about our own journey. Why not try? First, though, we should acknowledge a little something. Of course, we spend a lot of time talking about these three kings, but they're not referred to as kings in the actual story. They're talked about as magi, what we translate as wise men, but really it's more like an astrologer. Think Madame Trelawney. Second, we talk about them as three, though in the text it just says that they brought three gifts, not actually how many there were. And finally, we refer to them as from the Orient, though we have no idea where we get that. It just says from the East. How far east? We don't know. Now, as far as trying to light a 10-foot cigar goes, the Greek is unclear on that one. The point is, we don't know a whole lot about these guys, if they were even guys. All we know is that the story tells us that Magi came from the east, following a star to pay homage to the child-born King of the Jews. It's kind of a strange story, but there's something about it that we kind of recognize. We know that journey, don't we? There's something about it that we've been a part of before. We know what it's like to be a part of that journey. We've been on that path, not literally, but most of us, but we know what it's like to long for something out there that is worthy of our investment, to long for something out there that's worthy of our homage, and to seek it out. Sometimes with greater success than others. After all, we don't have a star to follow. And in our world, all that glitters is not gold, even if it promises it is. Think about it. From the moment we wake up until the moment we go to bed, we are surrounded by shiny things. Things that promise us that they will give us life if we can only reach out to grab them. Things that promise us a little something if we can just invest in them, if we can only put our time in them, if we can only pay them homage. Some we carry around in our pockets or our purse, and they call out to us throughout the course of the day. Almost from the moment we are born, we can recognize there is something we long for. Our very first instincts, once we're cognizant of our surroundings, are to seek out those eternal answers. Who am I? Where do I belong? Why do I matter? And in the absence of something better, we reach out for that flashiest thing we see. That thing which promises it will make us us, that thing which will promise fulfillment, that thing which promises life. When we're children, it's those things we can ask for on our Christmas lists. As we get older, it becomes more complicated, but make no mistake, the fleeting nature of them is the same. They may offer satisfaction for a moment, but as we know from hard experience, we can have all of the things our hearts desire: money, sex, family, position, title, grade, and still find ourselves empty. Because in the end, friends, a temporal answer will never satisfy an eternal question. And so we keep searching. In our story, the Magi turned to Jesus. Maybe in this new year, we might too. This story is so familiar that we sometimes miss the simple beauty of it, the existential beauty of it. Here are these magi that are coming from a distant way on this journey with these questions in mind. They're longing for something and they're searching it out. And they find their way somehow miraculously to Jesus, and when they encounter Christ, they can do nothing else but to give him, to offer him what they have. The story literally says they opened their treasure chest and gave him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. They gave it all away. I used to say that there's a reason they don't put a trailer hitch on a hearse. Then I was driving down the thruway and saw one pulling a trailer. Touché. But the point is the same. We can't take it with us. And in the end, all this stuff is just stuff. Think about our Christmas gifts. Where are they right now? Have we used our Christmas gifts? All of our Christmas gifts? All of our Christmas gifts? The truth is, we could have gotten whatever we wanted on our Christmas list, including the hippo, and it still wouldn't be enough. We could spend the rest of our lives amassing a fortune, some do, and it still wouldn't be enough. We could pursue whatever personal pleasure we can find, turning people into things, and it still wouldn't be enough, because in the end, friends, things don't bring life. Only love can do that. Do you see? That was the epiphany. That's what they understood. When confronted with Christ, they finally understood that set aside that gift of God's grace, the promise that there is nothing we can do or say to lose the love of God. Maybe we need to hear that again. There's nothing we can do or say to lose the love of God. When set alongside God's grace, everything else is just stuff. Do you see? Grace answers those eternal questions. Who am I? Loved. Where do I belong? Here. Why do I matter? Because without me, we couldn't be us. John Wesley used to call that moment of epiphany, that moment in which we finally get it, the moment of justification. That moment or moments when throughout the course of our life or in a flash, we suddenly understand the gift of God's grace. To be clear, it's there whether we understand it or not. You can't get rid of God's grace. It's yours. But for those who recognize it, for those who suddenly make sense of it and understand it and can open it up, comes a choice and the freedom to choose it. Will I embrace that grace or not? Will I live like this matters or not? Will I love as God first loved me or not? As Augustine said, my heart was restless until it found rest in you. We'll keep searching until we find it. But the entirety of the gospel proclaims that the only way to life is through love. Full stop. Of course, that's the hard part. In our story, the Magi, we're told, leave for their country by another road. It's a simple line, the very last one, easy to throw away. They leave for another country by a different road. Now, ostensibly, that was because they were fleeing the violence of Herod, violence which in the very next passage would force Jesus and Mary and Joseph into political refugees. They would turn them into political refugees, people seeking asylum in Egypt, something we might remember these days. Jesus was among the political asylum seekers. Perhaps he still is. But that story is familiar to us for another reason. We get what it's like to have one of those moments, one of those epiphanies, to have the light go off and then suddenly find ourselves saying, how do I live differently? How do I come off the mountain? Where do I go from here? The Magi went home to their country by a different road. The truth is, there comes a moment when we have to step away. We can sit in church and nod our heads, and things can seem like they all make sense, and then we step out, and there's all these flashy things out there, those little reminders in our pockets telling us that we need to be something we're not. And we quickly forget those eternal answers, and instead grasp hold of those fleeting responses. That's the most difficult part. Finding a different way to the same home. That's why we need each other. We need companionship for the journey, friends. Sure, there's a personal component of discipleship, but it's fulfilled in community. We can't love our neighbors as ourselves without neighbors. We need people around us. That's why we're here, literally and figuratively. We're here because we need people who are willing to come alongside us even for a moment, to keep pointing us in the direction of life, to let us know when we go astray, to hold us accountable so that we live like this matters. Do you see? We all need people, and the good news is we have them. Look around, friends. These are your peeps. These are they who will walk alongside you. These are they who will lift you up. These are they who are willing to listen when you need an ear, and to cry when you need a tear, and to smile when you need some cheer. We're not perfect, but we're more perfect together than we are apart. In other words, friends, Christmas may be over, but we're still here, and our journey has just begun. Thanks be to God. Amen.